The African savanna, with its vast expanses of golden grasslands and acacia-dotted horizons, is a land of both beauty and peril. Here, under the scorching sun and amid the rustling grasses, life and death are in a constant dance, dictated by the primal forces of nature. In this unforgiving environment, only the strongest, smartest, and most ruthless survive. Among the countless prides of lions that roam this untamed wilderness, one coalition rose to legendary status, not for their size or strength alone, but for their unparalleled ferocity and brutal tactics: the Mapogos. The story of the Mapogos begins in the early 2000s within the borders of the Sabi Sands Game Reserve, a place renowned for its biodiversity and for being a stronghold of the African lion. The reserve, which forms part of the Greater Kruger National Park in South Africa, is a place where the cycle of life is visible in its rawest form. Predators and prey share the land in a delicate balance, and every decision can mean the difference between life and death. It is here, in this crucible of nature, that the Mapogos forged their fearsome reputation. Before the Mapogos, the lion prides of Sabi Sands followed a predictable pattern. Coalitions of male lions would form, usually consisting of brothers or close relatives, and together they would take over a territory, defeat the resident males, and mate with the females to pass on their genes. This was the natural order, a cycle that had been playing out for millennia. However, the Mapogos were different. They were not just another coalition of male lions. They were a phenomenon that would change the landscape of lion dynamics in the region forever. The origins of the Mapogos are steeped in mystery and intrigue. The coalition consisted of 6 male lions, each with a distinctive personality and role within the group. Their names would become synonymous with terror: Makulu, Pretty Boy, Mr. T, Kinky Tail, Rasta, and Dreadlocks. These lions were not all brothers, a fact that set them apart from many other coalitions. The group's leader, Makulu, was the largest and oldest, hailing from a different pride than the others. His immense size and strength earned him the role of the dominant male, but it was the unity and coordinated aggression of the entire group that made the Mapogos so formidable. The documentary opens with sweeping shots of the African landscape, the camera gliding over the vast plains where the drama of life and death plays out every day. Against this backdrop, the voice of a seasoned wildlife narrator begins to tell the tale of the Mapogos, setting the stage for the unfolding story of power, violence, and survival. The narrative delves into the early days of the Mapogos, exploring how these 6 lions came together and why their coalition was so unusually large. Hey guys! It means a lot to me that you're here watching, and I'm excited to keep doing it for you. If you want to support me and help with my channel, please subscribe to my channel. Your support would mean a lot and give me the motivation to continue on this adventure. Lions typically form coalitions to increase their chances of survival and to take over territories from rival males. Most coalitions consist of 2 or 3 males, often brothers, who have grown up together. The Mapogos, however, were an anomaly. Their large numbers gave them an unprecedented advantage, allowing them to dominate vast territories and overpower other lion coalitions with relative ease. This coalition's size and strength made them nearly invincible, but it also meant that their actions would be more aggressive and far-reaching than any coalition seen before. The introduction continues by exploring the dynamics within the Mapogo coalition. While Makulu was the de facto leader due to his age and size, the group operated more like a military unit than a traditional pride. Each lion had a role to play, and their cooperation in hunting, fighting, and patrolling their territory was extraordinary. The bonds between these lions were strong, but their loyalty to one another was forged in blood and violence. One of the most striking aspects of the Mapogos was their sheer brutality. The documentary delves into their first major acts of aggression, which set the tone for their reign of terror. The Mapogos began their rise to power by systematically eliminating other male lions in the region. These were not just ordinary territorial disputes. The Mapogos waged a war of extermination. They sought out and killed rival males, sometimes even tracking them down over long distances. This level of aggression was unprecedented, and it sent shockwaves through the lion population of Sabi Sands. The Mapogos' tactics were ruthless. They would invade the territories of other prides, overpower the resident males, and kill any cubs they found. This behavior, known as infanticide, is common among lions, as new males often kill the offspring of the previous males to bring the females back into estrus. However, the Mapogos took this to an extreme. They not only killed cubs, but also went after any potential rivals, regardless of age or strength. This ensured that their dominance would go unchallenged for years to come. As the introduction draws to a close, the documentary highlights the early successes of the Mapogos. Their coalition grew stronger with each victory, and their reputation spread across the reserve and beyond. They were not just feared, they were respected as the ultimate predators, an unstoppable force that reshaped the lion dynamics of the region. The other lions of Sabi Sands had to adapt or perish in the face of this new reality. The Mapogos had set a new standard for what it meant to be a dominant lion coalition, and their story was only just beginning. The introduction leaves the audience with a sense of anticipation as the stage is set for the unfolding drama of the Mapogos reign. The scene transitions to the next phase of the documentary, where the full extent of their brutality and the impact of their actions will be revealed. The Mapogos, at the height of their power, were more than just a coalition of lions. They were a symbol of raw, untamed dominance. Their reputation had spread far beyond the Sabi Sands Game Reserve, a place where every living creature, from the smallest impala to the mightiest elephant, seemed to tread with caution. The Mapogos reign was marked by violence, bloodshed, and an ironclad rule that sent shivers through the heart of the African wilderness. But as history has shown time and again, absolute power often sows the seeds of its own destruction. The documentary begins this climactic phase with a scene of eerie calm. The sun sets over the savanna, casting long shadows across the land, a foreshadowing of the darkness that would soon engulf the Mapogos. The narration takes on a grave tone as it recounts the coalition's unstoppable rise, but now with an undercurrent of tension, hinting at the challenges that lay ahead. As the Mapogos extended their territory, their encounters with rival coalitions became increasingly brutal. The documentary revisits the infamous clash with the Sparta males, a once dominant group that had controlled a significant part of the reserve. The battle between the Mapogos and the Sparta males was not just a territorial dispute, it was a war of annihilation. The Mapogos, led by the ferocious Mr. T and his equally fearsome brother Kinky Tail, descended upon the Sparta males with a fury that seemed almost supernatural. The filmmakers used slow-motion footage of the initial confrontation, capturing the raw power and terrifying speed of the Mapogos as they charged into battle. The scene is punctuated by the growls and roars of the combatants, a symphony of violence that echoes across the plains. The Sparta males, caught off guard by the ferocity of the attack, fought desperately to hold their ground. The documentary shows the sheer intensity of the fight, the swipes of claws, the clash of teeth, and the blood that stained the earth. It was a battle unlike any other, with the Mapogos displaying a level of brutality that shocked even seasoned wildlife observers. In one particularly dramatic sequence, Kinky Tail is shown locking onto the throat of one of the Sparta males, his powerful jaws clamping down with relentless force. The camera zooms in on the eyes of the dying lion, reflecting a mixture of fear, pain, and the inevitable acceptance of death. This moment, frozen in time, serves as a stark reminder of the harsh realities of life in the wild. The Sparta male's lifeless body falls to the ground, a silent testament to the Mapogos' dominance. But even as the Mapogos celebrated their victory, cracks were beginning to show within their seemingly invincible coalition. The constant fighting, the endless patrols, and the unrelenting pressure of maintaining such a vast territory were beginning to take their toll. The documentary shifts its focus to the internal dynamics of the group, where tension was brewing beneath the surface. Mr. T, known for his aggression and unpredictable behavior, began to challenge the established order within the coalition. His ambition and ruthlessness, once assets in battle, now became a source of discord. The documentary reveals how Mr. T's increasingly erratic actions began to strain his relationship with his brothers. In one chilling scene, Mr. T is shown engaging in a fierce altercation with Makulu, the oldest and most experienced of the Mapogos. The fight, though brief, is intense, Makulu's imposing size clashing with Mr. T's explosive fury. The other members of the coalition watch from a distance, uncertain of where their loyalties should lie. The tension within the coalition is palpable, and the documentary uses this internal conflict to build a sense of foreboding. The Mapogos, who had always relied on their unity and collective strength, were now facing a new kind of enemy, one that came from within. The narration emphasizes the precariousness of their situation. As formidable as they were, the Mapogos were not immune to the forces of nature that governed all living beings, including the inevitability of decline. As the coalition's internal strife grew, so did the external threats. The Selati males, a younger and equally ambitious coalition, had been watching the Mapogos from a distance, waiting for the right moment to strike. The documentary builds tension as it follows the Selati males, showing their calculated approach as they began to probe the edges of the Mapogos territory. The Selati males were not just challengers. They were the embodiment of the next generation, hungry for power and ready to topple the old regime. The filmmakers expertly juxtapose scenes of the Selati males' stealthy incursions with the increasingly fraught atmosphere within the Mapogo ranks. The audience is drawn into a narrative where the inevitable confrontation looms like a dark cloud on the horizon. The Selati males, aware of the Mapogos' growing vulnerabilities, grew bolder with each passing day, and the tension builds to an almost unbearable level as the two coalitions prepared for the ultimate showdown. The documentary reaches its emotional zenith with the climactic battle between the Mapogos and the Selati males. The setting is grim, a moonless night where the only sounds are the rustling of the dry grass and the distant calls of nocturnal creatures. The Mapogos, weary but defiant, stand their ground as the Selati males emerge from the darkness. The battle that follows is nothing short of apocalyptic. The filmmakers pull out all the stops to convey the sheer chaos and terror of the fight. The scene is a maelstrom of roars, flashing claws, and savage bites. The documentary slows down the action at critical moments, highlighting the desperate struggle of the Mapogos as they fight not just for their territory, but for their very survival. The camera captures every brutal detail: the spray of blood as teeth meet flesh, the crushing weight of one lion pinning another to the ground, and the agonized cries of the wounded. In the midst of this chaos, Kinky Tail, one of the most feared and respected members of the Mapogos, finds himself isolated from the group. The Selati males, recognizing his significance, focus their attacks on him. What follows is a harrowing sequence where Kinky Tail fights with all the ferocity that had made him a legend. The documentary does not shy away from the brutality of his final moments. As the Selati males overwhelm him, the camera lingers on his defiant struggle, capturing the tragic inevitability of his fate. His fall is both heartbreaking and awe-inspiring, a powerful symbol of the Mapogos' decline. The death of Kinky Tail is a turning point. The remaining Mapogos, demoralized and weakened, are forced to retreat. The documentary uses this moment to reflect on the transient nature of power in the wild. The Mapogos, who had once seemed invincible, were now on the defensive, their dominance slipping away with each passing day. The narration, heavy with sorrow, speaks to the audience about the inevitability of change, even for the mightiest of kings. As the scene shifts to the aftermath of the battle, the audience is left with a haunting image: the bodies of fallen lions scattered across the battlefield, and the remaining Mapogos limping away into the shadows. The documentary underscores the emotional weight of this moment, emphasizing the stark contrast between the coalition's former glory and their current state of decline. But the tension doesn't dissipate entirely. The filmmakers cleverly leave the audience in a state of suspense, as the future of the remaining Mapogos is still uncertain. The Selati males, though victorious, are not yet secure in their new territory, and the specter of further conflict looms large. The documentary hints at the possibility of more bloodshed to come, leaving the audience with a sense of unease and anticipation. The fall of Kinky Tail marked the beginning of the end for the Mapogos, but their story was far from over. The remaining members of the coalition, Makulu, Mr. T, Pretty Boy, and Rasta, were still lions of immense power and experience. Yet, the death of one of their fiercest warriors had shaken them to their core. The once unshakable foundation of their coalition had been cracked, and the Mapogos were now fighting a different kind of battle, one against time, fate, and the relentless advance of their younger rivals. The documentary picks up with the scene of the remaining Mapogos regrouping after the devastating loss of Kinky Tail. The mood is somber. The coalition, now down to 4 members, is forced to confront the grim reality of their situation. The Selati males, having tasted victory, are not content to stop with the death of a single Mapogo. They are determined to claim the entire territory that the Mapogos had once ruled with such ferocity. The Selati males begin their campaign of terror, pushing deeper into the heart of the Mapogos territory. The tension in the documentary builds as the camera follows the remaining Mapogos on their patrols, now more cautious and wary than ever before. Each rustle of the grass, each distant roar, is met with bared teeth and taut muscles, the fear of another ambush ever present. The landscape that they once moved through with supreme confidence now feels alien, hostile, and fraught with danger. The documentary captures the growing desperation of the Mapogos as they try to defend what little territory they still hold. Makulu, the oldest and most experienced of the group, takes on the role of protector, guiding his younger brothers through these perilous times. His once powerful frame is now visibly worn down by years of battle, yet his determination remains unshaken. The camera lingers on his face, showing the scars that map his life of violence, each one a story of survival in a world that no longer feels like his own. Mr. T, on the other hand, is portrayed as a lion on the edge. The death of Kinky Tail, his closest ally in the coalition, has ignited a fire of rage within him that cannot be quenched. The documentary delves deep into his psyche, showing him patrolling the territory with an almost manic energy, looking for any sign of the Selati males. His roars, once a symbol of dominance, now carry an undercurrent of desperation, a desperate attempt to hold on to a power that is slipping away. The tension reaches new heights as the Selati males, emboldened by their previous success, launch a series of coordinated attacks on the remaining Mapogos. The documentary does not shy away from the brutality of these encounters. In one particularly intense sequence, the Mapogos are shown defending a vital waterhole, a lifeline in the arid landscape, from the advancing Selati males. The battle that ensues is a desperate, chaotic clash of wills, with neither side willing to give an inch. The filmmakers use every tool at their disposal to convey the sheer intensity of this struggle. The sound of growls and roars fills the air, and the camera work is frenetic, capturing the violence from every angle. Dust and blood mingle in the fading light of the day, and the viewer is left on the edge of their seat, uncertain of who will emerge victorious. The Mapogos, though outnumbered, fight with the ferocity of lions who know they have nothing left to lose. For a moment, it seems as if they might hold the line, but the toll of years and the relentless pressure from the Selati males begins to show. The documentary shifts to slow motion as Makulu, the coalition's leader, is overpowered by 2 of the Selati males. The camera captures every detail, the sweat glistening on his fur, the strain in his muscles as he fights to push them off, the blood that starts to seep from fresh wounds. It's a moment of heartbreaking vulnerability for the lion who had once seemed invincible. Just as it seems Makulu might fall, Mr. T charges in, his body a blur of muscle and fury. He crashes into the Selati males with a force that momentarily turns the tide of the battle. The 2 brothers, back to back, fend off their attackers in a show of unity that harks back to the Mapogos glory days. The documentary uses this moment to highlight the deep bond between the remaining members, a bond forged in blood and tested in the fires of battle. But this brief victory comes at a cost. As the Selati males retreat, regrouping for another assault, the camera focuses on the wounds sustained by the Mapogos. Makulu's once proud mane is matted with blood, and Mr. T limps away, his body battered from the relentless onslaught. The audience is left with the chilling realization that these lions, once the epitome of strength and dominance, are now mere shadows of their former selves. The documentary builds on this sense of impending doom as it follows the Mapogos in the days following the battle. Their territory, once vast and secure, is now shrinking rapidly. The Selati males are relentless, using their superior numbers and youthful energy to harass the Mapogos at every turn. The documentary conveys a sense of suffocating pressure as the Mapogos find themselves cornered, with fewer and fewer places to retreat. In a heart-wrenching scene, the Mapogos are shown arriving at a familiar part of their territory, a place that was once a stronghold but is now barren, devoid of the life that once thrived under their protection. The land, scarred by countless battles, seems to reflect the state of the coalition itself, weary, worn, and on the brink of collapse. The camera captures the faces of the Mapogos as they survey the desolate landscape, their eyes reflecting a mixture of exhaustion and resignation. The tension escalates as the documentary shifts to the final confrontation between the Mapogos and the Selati males. The setting is bleak. A storm is brewing on the horizon, the sky darkening as thunder rumbles in the distance. It is as if nature itself is preparing for the cataclysmic clash to come. The Mapogos, battered and bloodied, make their stand in a narrow ravine, the walls of rock on either side offering a semblance of protection. The Selati males approach, their figures silhouetted against the darkening sky. The air is thick with tension as the two coalitions face off, the space between them charged with the electricity of the impending storm. The documentary slows down time, capturing every detail. The flick of a tail, the narrowing of eyes, the heaving of chests as both sides prepare for the inevitable clash. When the storm finally breaks, it does so with a fury that mirrors the violence of the battle. Lightning illuminates the scene in brief, jagged flashes, casting the lions in stark, dramatic relief. The rain begins to fall in sheets, turning the ground beneath them into a quagmire of mud and blood. The battle that follows is nothing short of apocalyptic. The filmmakers pull the audience into the heart of the action, with the camera swirling through the chaos, capturing the desperation and determination of the Mapogos as they fight their last stand. The sound design is overwhelming, the roar of the lions mingling with the crash of thunder and the hiss of rain, creating a cacophony of nature's wrath. In the midst of the chaos, the documentary zeroes in on Mr. T, who has become the embodiment of the Mapogos defiance. He throws himself into the battle with reckless abandon, his roars echoing through the ravine like the wrath of a fallen king. But as the Selati males close in, even Mr. T's ferocity is not enough. The camera captures the moment when he is surrounded, his movements slowing as exhaustion and injury finally take their toll. The once mighty lion, who had struck fear into the hearts of so many, is now fighting for his life. Makulu, too, is shown battling with the last remnants of his strength. The documentary paints a tragic picture of the old lion, his once golden mane now streaked with mud and rain, his eyes dimming as the weight of years and battle presses down on him. As the Selati males close in, Makulu makes one final, desperate lunge, a last act of defiance from a king who refuses to bow. The battle ends not with a triumphant roar, but with a haunting silence. The storm passes, leaving the ravine quiet, except for the soft patter of rain on the muddy ground. The camera pans over the aftermath, the bodies of fallen lions, both Mapogo and Selati, lying still in the mud. The surviving Selati males, victorious but weary, slowly withdraw from the battlefield, leaving behind the remnants of the once great coalition. The documentary lingers on the images of the fallen Mapogos, their bodies a stark contrast to the vibrant, powerful lions they once were. The tension that has driven the narrative so far finally breaks, leaving the audience with a profound sense of loss and inevitability. The Mapogos, who had once ruled with unmatched ferocity, are no more. But in their fall, there is also a sense of resolution. The documentary shifts its tone from one of tension and drama to one of reflection, considering the legacy of the Mapogos. Their reign, though brutal and bloody, changed the course of lion history in the Sabi Sands Reserve. The Mapogos had reshaped the landscape, not just through their actions, but through the fear and respect they commanded. Their story, though it ends in tragedy, is one of the most compelling chapters in the history of the African wilderness. The continuation closes with a final shot of the ravine, now quiet and empty, the storm clouds dispersing to reveal a clear sky. The land scarred by the battle will heal in time, just as the lion population in the reserve will eventually recover. But the memory of the Mapogos, their rise, their reign and their fall, will linger on, a story of power, survival, and the unyielding forces of nature. The rise and fall of the Mapogos is a story that resonates far beyond the borders of the Sabi Sands Game Reserve. As the final chapter of their saga unfolds, the documentary shifts its focus from the brutal realities of their battles to the enduring impact they have left on the land, the lions, and the people who have come to know their story. The Mapogos may have been vanquished, but their legacy continues to shape the narrative of the African wilderness. The conclusion opens with a serene, almost haunting scene of the savannah at dawn. The golden light of the rising sun casts long shadows across the plains, and the camera pans slowly over the landscape that once served as the battleground for the Mapogos. The atmosphere is one of reflection, a stark contrast to the violent turmoil that characterized their reign. The narrator's voice, now softer and more contemplative, begins to recount the lasting influence of the Mapogos on the Sabi Sands ecosystem. The documentary explores how the Mapogos' unprecedented dominance altered the genetic landscape of the lion population in the region. Through their aggressive takeover of multiple prides, the Mapogos sired numerous offspring, many of whom would go on to become key players in the lion dynamics of Sabi Sands. The legacy of the Mapogos lives on through these descendants, who carry the same fierce bloodline that once ruled the reserve. The documentary delves into the lives of these young lions, showing how they navigate a world that has been irrevocably shaped by the actions of their fathers. The filmmakers use this exploration of the Mapogos genetic legacy to pose larger questions about the nature of power, survival, and continuity in the wild. The Mapogos were not just a coalition of lions, they were a force of nature that, in many ways, redefined what it meant to be a dominant predator in the African wilderness. Their influence on the lion population in Sabi Sands is evident in the behavior of the new coalitions that have risen since their fall. These young lions, many of whom are direct descendants of the Mapogos, exhibit the same ruthless efficiency and territorial aggression that characterized their forebears. But the legacy of the Mapogos is not just genetic. The documentary also explores how their story has become a symbol of the broader struggles for survival that define life in the wild. The Mapogos' reign was marked by violence and bloodshed, but it was also a testament to the resilience and adaptability that are essential for survival in the unforgiving African landscape. The documentary reflects on how the Mapogos, through their actions, forced other lion coalitions to adapt, evolve, and become stronger. In many ways, the Mapogos' legacy is one of evolution, a reminder that the laws of nature are harsh, but they also drive the continuous cycle of life and death that sustains the ecosystem. The documentary then shifts its focus to the human perspective, exploring how the story of the Mapogos has captured the imagination of people around the world. Wildlife enthusiasts, researchers, and filmmakers alike have been drawn to the dramatic narrative of the Mapogos, seeing in their story a microcosm of the broader themes of power, conflict, and survival. The documentary interviews several experts who have studied the Mapogos, each offering insights into what made this coalition so unique and why their story continues to resonate. One expert discusses the psychological impact of the Mapogos on those who observe them. The sheer brutality of their actions, coupled with their undeniable charisma, made them both feared and revered. The Mapogos became larger than life, their story taking on a mythic quality that has persisted long after their deaths. The documentary uses archival footage and personal anecdotes to illustrate how the Mapogos inspired awe, fear, and even admiration among those who followed their exploits. The filmmakers also highlight the role of media in immortalizing the Mapogos. The numerous documentaries, articles, and books about the Mapogos have ensured that their story is passed down to future generations. The documentary reflects on the power of storytelling in preserving the legacy of these lions, turning them into legends of the African wilderness. The Mapogos, through the lens of media, have become more than just lions. They are symbols of the primal forces that govern life and death in the wild. As the documentary nears its conclusion, it returns to the present day, showing how the Sabi Sands Game Reserve has changed in the years since the Mapogos' fall. The reserve is teeming with life, the cycle of birth and death continuing unabated. The camera captures images of young lion cubs playing under the watchful eyes of their mothers, the next generation of predators learning the skills they will need to survive. The presence of the Mapogos is still felt in the reserve, not just through their descendants, but in the very landscape they once dominated. The documentary closes with a final reflection on the themes that have driven the narrative from the beginning: power, survival, and the relentless passage of time. The Mapogos were a product of their environment, a coalition that rose to power through sheer force and maintained it with an iron grip. But even the most powerful are not immune to the forces of nature, and the story of the Mapogos serves as a reminder that in the wild, nothing lasts forever. The coalition's fall was inevitable, a part of the natural cycle that governs all life on Earth. The final scenes of the documentary are both poignant and hopeful. The camera follows the path of the rising sun across the savannah, a new day dawning over the land where the Mapogos once ruled. The narrator's voice, now filled with a sense of closure, speaks to the enduring legacy of the Mapogos. They may be gone, but their story will live on, not just in the memories of those who witnessed their reign, but in the very fabric of the wilderness they once called home. The concluding message is clear. The Mapogos were not just the most brutal lions in history. They were a reflection of the wild itself, beautiful, dangerous, and ultimately transient. Their legacy, however, is eternal, a testament to the power of nature and the indomitable spirit of the African wilderness. And we have reached the end of another story. If you liked it, leave in the comments what else you want to see here, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you support us.